everybody, it's Brian Mahoney. Welcome to OTT Executive Podcast. I'm the CEO of Trend Research and president of the 50,000 strong OTT executive community. We're continuing in our conversations with leaders in the OTT industry. Today, we're joined by Erick Opeka. Erick, welcome.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
So Erick, quick introductions on yourself, please.
Sure. So I'm Erick Opeka. I'm the president and chief strategy officer of Cinedigm. Cinedigm has been around for about 20 years, but our focus today is really on the FAST and OTT streaming sector. We operate a portfolio of about 20 different streaming channels that we like to call enthusiast channels that focus on a lot of specialty niches, ranging from anime, horror, popular celebrities and icons, just really across the board. So we have about 80 million monthly users across that portfolio of 30 channels I described. So happy to discuss.
That's amazing. So Erick, we've known each other for a while. I think you went to one of my initial OTT executive summits. You've been a speaker. You're sort of actively engaged online and social around, general trends in the industry. I definitely wanted to kind of pick your brain here today, not only about Cinedigm, but industry trends. First, let's cover Cinedigm a little bit. You mentioned these 30 different channels. What is sort of your content strategy? You look at some of these different communities of interest. How do you source your content? How do you launch a new channel, for instance? And what is what kind of machinations go into that decision-making process?
Sure. Well, as we look at the landscape, we think there are most of the major streamers, as I'll call them, are really focused on really broad-based entertainment. So those channels are going to be, a mile wide and inch deep. They'll touch a lot of things, but they really won't go deep enough into any one specific area. A great example is, on Netflix. Netflix has a good selection of pretty accessible anime content, for example. But if you love anime, Crunchyroll is where you're going to go, Funimation, to really get your fix. So we think that is just, the natural evolution of, the cable ecosystem as the streaming ecosystem, combination of FAST and specialty subscription sort of replace basic cable and the role basic cable played in sort of specialized interest focus areas. That's really what we're focused on. So really what we look for in an enthusiast vertical that makes sense is one that we think can scale to, tens of millions of users on a global footprint. So that's why we're focused on things like faith and family, horror. We're the number 2 horror platform. We're the number 2 or 3 faith or family platform. We focus on anime in the sort of retro bucket, and also Asian content in general, which is a pretty popular footprint, especially Korean dramas and so forth.
Yep.
So we source on the content front, it's a combination of licensed library, owned library, plus exclusive and original programming. We do it a little bit different than the big guys. The whole industry is sort of shifting back towards a windowed model to maximize revenue and get the cost efficiencies out of the production. That's what we've been doing all along. We just believe in that model, especially for fan-centric content, where they're going to be even more apt to go to a theater or buy a premium product than a general entertainment audience.
So do each of those channels kind of stand on their own? I mean, obviously it doesn't, the overlap between horror and family and anime, there may be a small Venn diagram there. Do you manage each of those properties as kind of like their own little island, or is there some synergy across those different, fan-based, content channels?
Sure. So, first and foremost, we do have our own version of a general entertainment service called Cineverse. And that's, our focus there is, filling the gap where the largest streamers sort of dropped the ball. If you look at the biggest services in the industry, collectively they represent about 2% of the produced movies and shows that you would find in the entirety of IMDb. So it's a pretty small basis of titles. So we think, when you start to look at these enthusiast verticals, the broad and rich array of foreign content, that, after the big services kind of cream off the top 3 or 4% of Korea's output or the Philippines output or Taiwan's output, there's a huge amount of content that's great content. The third or fourth best, thriller series in Korea is just as exciting as the Squid Games, but no one hears about it because the big guys just don't go that deep. So, when we talk about number one, we have that big umbrella that overlaps everything that we do. And then in our various verticals, in the Asian vertical, we have, Service Asian Crush and Retro Crush. There's overlap there. In the horror space and fandom space, we have Bloody Disgusting TV. We have Screambox. We have a service called Midnight Pulp, which is sort of cult midnight movies. We distribute El Rey Network, which kind of fits into that bucket. Con TV, which is a service we've operated for 8 or 9 years now, sort of fanboy centric, fangirl centric content. Mm-hmm. So we think there's a lot of overlap in those. Family has less overlap with sort of the horror, genre stuff. Mm-hmm. A little bit, but not a lot. But there's quite a bit of content that, does fit in that. We have a documentary channel, we have a British channel, we have kids channels and programming. So those all sort of overlap in families. So we go into clusters. They don't all have to overlap, but you can get them all on one service that we have called Cineverse.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And so you mentioned kind of fans and enthusiast content. Do the metrics bear that out? Like, do you experience better and higher engagement, for instance, or better monetization because you're, anime, I have a friend that's into that and they're really, they're going to spend the extra time versus, as you mentioned, kind of the mile wide and an inch deep type of strategy.
Yeah. So, enthusiasts, we've found, the number of minutes watched in a session is just simply higher for enthusiast audiences. The total number of hours consumed monthly, I think we were, in the 40 to 50% higher bracket. In terms of churn on the subscription side of the business, we see far lower churn for these audiences. And ARPU, especially, we have a model really, the horror model we have is probably the most mature. And, we have editorial, we have podcasts, we have, fast and on-demand offerings, we have subscription offerings, we take movies out theatrically, we have consumer products. So if you kind of look at that sort of approach, I think there's a chart going around from, 1954 that Walt Disney illustrated that shows, Disney's, what his thinking was about theme parks and consumer products and TV and theatrical all interplaying. And that really hasn't changed. The delivery mechanisms and the content have changed, but the idea that you're going to super serve somebody who is deeply interested and passionate about something, that transcends time. And so that's really, I think, the approach that we want to take with all of our services, that content, commerce, and community, all sort of within one, under one deep enthusiast vertical. We think that's really the future when it comes to the enthusiast side of the business.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about community. I think it's really interesting because a lot of people think of streaming and they just think of a video player and people, selecting titles or turning on a fast channel, whatever. How do you wrap that up in the community, social engagement, all the different types of devices where they might have access to that content? Because a lot of studies have shown that if you get them into the community, they're going to watch more. You're going to be able to monetize more. Maybe talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. Well, I think, we made an acquisition last year of a company called Digital Media Rights out of New York. David Chu and Michael Hong were the founders. And they founded that company on the basis of, a combination of both social, fast, and on-demand as well as subscription, and sort of one approach to how they market the audiences. And, I think the idea is, number one is authenticity, right? It's really getting a team and experts that really understand the audience and post authentic content, right? Is where it starts. We think the idea of looking at social is less about a monetization platform and more about really a marketing channel. So our investments in content there, I mean, there's a lot, there's a great book out recently about, about sort of the 2000s, the 2000 and 2010s era of BuzzFeed and Huffington Post and all that's out there. And sort of that era of social video being a monetization platform. You can make, if you pay for the content, you're doing well, in my opinion. What we really focus on there is engagement and sort of driving viewership over to connected TV, where there's real monetization. So that's really the focus there, is deep engagement with the user on a regular and consistent basis, and then leveraging that in a smart way as a marketing channel to the more premium offerings and commerce and so on.
Okay, it's a means for viewer acquisition, really.
Yeah, we think, and there are people that only engage with our brands on social. And we think they have a compelling offering in that respect, so they may not watch videos, but we are getting good engagement from them on purchasing products, buying movie tickets, things like that. So, we do look at that as an essential piece even for the ones that don't transition. But for the ones that do, we find them to be far more engaged and stickier. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I do recall it was a materially beneficial lift for the people who are engaged on the streaming for services that also consume social versus consumers that didn't.
Yep. So Eric, of the 30 channels that you have, what's the mix between sort of VOD versus, fast channels? I mean, that's a big trend right now. Is it more of an opportunistic strategy there, or are you kind of driving things in a particular way?
Yeah, so, well, I think one of the biggest elements that we focused on is having a blended portfolio. As a couple of years ago, when we started in this business, everybody was focused on subscription. Advertising was nascent. And then, we got into FAST in 2017 when there was no money in it. It was more of an engagement mechanism in our own apps, right? We partnered with Verizon in an early sort of product that did that, and we saw engagement go through the roof. So naturally, when we saw that start to evolve to the connected TV ecosystem with the early stuff that Zumo was doing way back then, they don't get enough credit for being the pioneers that they are. But in that era, we jumped right into FAST. You jump to today, and while FAST is rapidly burgeoning, it's a gladiator pit of competition, and then you have sort of the macro ad market situation that's going on right now out there. With a little bit of softness in some parts of the business. So for us, we like the idea of the having FAST, AVOD, having subscription, commerce, and then also, we still do transactional, we still do theatrical, we still do consumer products. So we think that diversification of revenue streams is really important, because you're giving the consumers many different ways and many different price points to do things how they want to do them. But it also insulates you against the fashion of the day, or the fad of the day, or the macroeconomic condition of the day.
Yeah, it's true. It seems that is a good point. It seems there's always some reason for embracing some new trend like FAST or whatever, but it's a good idea to be diversified, right? You never know what's going to happen around the corner.
Sure. We do believe in FAST, as the heir to the cable, basic cable throne over time. But that also means it'll be highly competitive on both the platform and the channel side as well. So I think it would be foolish to put all eggs in that basket.
So does it seem like the industry is kind of going like, back to the future in terms of embracing fast, kind of linear, lean back, curated content? We've got, rebundling going on. What are your thoughts about that, more from an industry perspective? Is this a natural sort of progression in the evolution and the growing up of the industry, or is there something different in play here?
Yeah, well, I think it was very interesting because when we started getting into fast, if when we started launching these streaming services, if you had told me that 8 or 9 years later the fastest growing segment would be this sort of throwback linear approach, I would have laughed, and everyone in the industry would have laughed. And I think what it is really a solution to a problem that no one has figured out from a technological side, which is a discovery issue. I think fast and both SVOD, AVOD are highly complementary to each other. We tend to look at them as the yin and yang. The fast is the lean back. We kind of look at the user persona who's using fast. It's the busy worker or tired parent who just wants their eyeballs fed. They want to just flip something on, put it on in the background while they're eating, while they're doing chores or whatever. Well, we have Bob Ross, for example. We've got lots of anecdotal comments about people just putting it on as a companion during the day while they're working from home or, with their coffee in the morning. So, we look at that solution is I don't want to spend time engaging and choosing and discovering. I want something just to be fed to me, that I know and trust what it is going to be. On the flip side, the on-demand, the yang to the yin, to fast yin is really about a deliberate choice. It's weekend viewing, it's appointment viewing, it's I want to watch Succession, or I want to watch a new movie that's coming out, or I heard about whatever new show is coming on, and so I'm going to tune into that. So those are sort of, I think they serve different needs for behavior. I think the biggest issue that I really have with the fast business is it's reflecting what happens in a lot of technological, comes with a lot of technological change, which it takes its influence from the past and tries to extrapolate that into the future. I think fast doesn't take enough advantage of, these are sophisticated, smart TVs are sophisticated software-based platforms. And yet we're just basically putting a pre-programmed stream with hard-coded ads that has no dynamic elements to it. That's no personalization to it. You and I will both get the same linear experience on any channel we look at. But there's no reason that should be that way or has to be that way. It just reflects the early stages of the industry we're in.
Yeah, it's kind of dumbing it down and just making it more comfortable. I mean, it puts more onus on you to curate the right content, right? Versus content discovery that might be a little bit more engine driven or AI driven. So it's more work, but it seems like the fast channels we've got more and more going every day. I know you wrote just recently about celebrity based fast channels. It seems like if you can plant a flag around a celebrity or a community of interest or anything, quite frankly, you can draw eyeballs, right?
Yeah, I think this is, and this is a trend, obviously, we've been seeing, in the rest of the entertainment industry, right? With, people like Reese Witherspoon or Kevin Hart building media companies around their personas and brands. And I think, and this this has been going on. This was, this is nothing new. We have the Oprah channel and cable. We have Magnolia, Chip and Joanna Gaines, a recent cable launch. So it's what it is, it's short circuiting around building a brand from scratch, and leveraging a pre-existing fan base. It's a little, it's a little more challenging now than it has been in the past. There's a lot more risk. People are human, and they mess up, they make mistakes, and suddenly you get a Martha Stewart situation or something where
right,
somebody does something, and you've invested multi-million dollars into a brand, of a person's brand that can, and also people's tastes change, and just like any brand,
right,
stars and talent come in and out of favor. We've been focusing on talent and brands that sort of transcend time, Elvis, Bob Ross, things like that. We have more coming on that front. I think shows can also be brands, right? I think that's been on another trend where the shows themselves, you've got a lot of single IP channels in FAST today that are, cleaning up, and some of them are making, more money than fully programmed channels. I look at that as an extension of what's been happening in cable anyways. If you turn to the History Channel, you're going to see American Pickers and things like that. Pawn Stars over and over and over again, filling out the day. So it's nothing new, but I think that it's gone to its extreme logical conclusion of the show is the channel.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you talk about personal branding too. Let's bring it up a level about the industry. A lot of talk right now, a lot of layoffs happening. We've got billions of dollars of losses across the industry. What's your thought on that? Is that part of the industry growing up, or is that a dire warning sign that the business model in streaming right now is somehow broken and needs a complete, rethink of the strategy?
Yeah, well, I think this is a reflection of a broader macroeconomic trend. This tends to happen cyclically, where when money is cheap, everybody's focused on growth, right? And you end up tripping over scooters in Santa Monica, and having free, lots of free streaming offerings and things like that. But the reality is there are investor expectations of profit and profitability, and I think the biggest challenge has been just how much of a whipsaw the industry has shifted from, and Wall Street's focus has shifted from growth at all costs to where's the bottom line, right? And so that is, there's a great, I was just reading a great piece in Vanity Fair about this, and they made the sort of they said the equivalent of Ted Sarandos going 100 miles an hour down the freeway and then slamming on his brakes before he skidded out of control. And I think that's what's happened with a lot of companies is now everyone shifted their entire business models to compete with Netflix, which never really had to be judged on profitability. They were judged on subscriber growth, top line growth at all costs. I think the biggest challenge I think we'll face, the industry is going to face, is we're losing one of the most profitable media models of all time in the cable television model, where 30+% gross margins. You're talking tech level margins, just due to the captive audience and sort of structural dual revenue model of carriage fees and advertising that propped up a lot of things. In the early part of streaming, we had, all this money flowing in from Wall Street investors to grow the streaming sector at a breakneck pace, while you still had, tremendous amounts of cash flow coming from the television business, which hadn't. So you had this unique period of time where, uh, billions and billions of dollars of profits flowing from TV, and hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into streaming as investment to grow that business, meant this huge surge in the purchasing of content, investment in content, so forth. Well, with the decline of cable and the reckoning in investment and investors' needs for profitability now, I think we're going to be entering the dark ages for a little bit for the industry as we sort out and try to get this business profitable.
Yeah, it has been so jarring. I mean, just in the last year, we went from epidemic, driving, record level, viewership and adoption of streaming, to this, as you mentioned, slamming on the brakes and everybody trying to figure out how to, we've gone from cable dollars to now streaming pennies or maybe dimes or quarters, but it doesn't add up the same way. So, hey, so one of the things we like to do in these podcasts, Eric, is sort of personalize the luminaries in the industry, learn a little bit about, something about yourself, a hobby or an interest that our viewers might find interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm really passionate about, and it's kind of wonky, and I am in business, but I am passionate about, business and economics. I really do look at this and the trends around it pretty deeply, also on the technology side. But I live up in I live upstate New York. And when I say upstate, I don't mean, Hudson Valley. I am up near the Finger Lakes.
Oh, nice.
So it's wine and boating and, outdoor activities. So, my wife, my son and I, we spend a lot of time up here just enjoying these, deepest lakes in North America, or some of the deepest lakes in North America. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of great fishing.
Are they really? I didn't know that. Are they spring fed or river fed, or how does that work?
Yeah, they are. I don't know if they're. I think they're fed from the Great Lakes, but they are glacial lakes. So giant glaciers hundreds of years ago carved these finger-like lakes down, and it's just amazing. I think it's an hour flight from New York City. And there's, winemakers have come from all over the world due to the high quality of the land up here and soil and cheap prices relative to Napa. So you have some great, innovative wine making happening. I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about the Finger Lakes over the next 5 years.
Is Lake George one of the Finger Lakes, or is it nearby? My geography's not great.
That's sort of north of. That's in between Saratoga Springs and Albany, I want to say. So that's more. It's in the same plane, kind of, but it's far more east.
Okay.
And tiny compared to these big guys.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check it out. Maybe get an Airbnb coming up this summer. I've heard a lot of good things. You wouldn't think it's a winemaking place, though, huh? That's interesting.
Well, for years, it was known as some of the finest Rieslings in North America, and lots of ice wines. Those dessert, sweet dessert wines. So it's a little bit of a throwback to the 40s and 50s style of wine. But lately now you've got great reds and other varietals that rival some of the best stuff you're getting out of Oregon and things these days. So you still have a lot of there's a lot of variance in quality, let's say, but I think the great ones are really great.
Well, my wife has a sweet tooth. Riesling's her favorite style of wine, so that's another reason to get out to check out the Finger Lakes. Well, this is fantastic. I really appreciate your insights, not only about Cinedigm, but the industry. You've been a veteran for a long time. We've got a lot to learn from you. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, thank you for having me. And, if anybody ever has a question or wants to engage, jump on LinkedIn and you can find me on there.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Again, this is Brian Mahoney from OTT Executive Podcast signing off, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.